Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so I see two challenges today. One, the AC is very chilling, and second, I think is the last session before lunch, right? So we'll try and do justice to this. So I think the anchor already introduced everyone. I thought I may introduce them in my what I can do justice to them. So I think we have Pratyush sir, who has been a veteran in the CSR and the sustainability space. He has mostly, I mean, 20 years he has wore a hat from a donor and a CSR angle. How do you build capacities of non-profits, and how do you ensure that the money which is given to non-profits is given largely for their capacity building and a lot of for program delivery. We have Erica. If I may say, she breathes and lives tech and open source, right? So again, a lot of experience in building technology applications, largely, primarily open source, and advocate of open source. We have Sapna. Again, she comes from Alstom, which is one of the progressive technology companies themselves, building the robust and the finest metro network across the globe. And she has always, I mean, she's also herself an advocate of technology in her funding with non-profits. So I think what we'll try and do today is two things before we leave. One is for non-profits in the room, we'll try and give you, if not a playbook, largely do's and don'ts of what you should keep in mind while you're integrating technology in your projects. And if we have some donors or CSRs in the room, also what you should support, what you should be wary of in the tech, right? So I think there is some slight disturbance, so I'm sorry for that at the back, but I think we'll live with that. And with that, I think, start the panel. Just a show of hands, how many of us are non-profits here? Okay. How many you are from CSR or donors, grant givers side? Okay, okay, good. So we have a mixed bag. So I think with the first question, and I'll ask all of you, maybe I'll start with Erica, she's closest to me here on the panel today, that largely tech platforms are very overwhelming and intimidating when it comes for non-profits, right? And there's a fair share of people, how do they perceive, and generally building tech is considered very overwhelming and intimidating. And you do it for a, like I said, for a living, right? So how do you ensure that whatever is being built, non-profits are able to use it and all of that from your perspective, Erika?
Cool. Thank you, Swapnil. And thanks to CSR Box for having us here. So yeah, absolutely. Whenever something is new, and we know tech in the social space is like something which is very new. We know that nonprofits are great program implementers, but when it comes to technology, you fear its adoption into your programs. And the reasons are many. Like, it's just simply like, whenever we work on something new, there is fear. Will I be able to understand? Does this fit my need? So yes, it gets very overwhelming. So we at Project Tech for Dev try to simplify this process, and we make an effort that to make it less intimidating and overwhelming for the nonprofits. I would just like to introduce the organization. Like, we at Project Tech for Dev, our mission is to empower and transform the way nonprofits, specifically, I would say in India, the way they use tech and data to scale their programs and impact. We are a bunch of people who come from technology space, but at the same time have spent around 2 decades working in the social sector. So we feel fortunate that we are able to understand the limitations, challenges of this sector, and then design technology, trying to address those gaps, and also considering the limitations that the nonprofits have. So we're not sitting out of this sector and designing solutions for the sector. Our approach is a very community-centric approach. Now, the first platform that we built is a WhatsApp-based chatbot platform that actually was born during the pandemic. So our founder, Donald Lobo, who sits out of the US, has been working in this sector for more than 2 decades now. And during the pandemic, when the lockdowns happened and the nonprofits could not reach out to their communities, that is the time when he felt that can we do something about this, because the work had to go on. And that's when we realized we saw smartphone penetration increasing, network connectivity improving, and WhatsApp was one of the, the first applications you would find on anyone's phones. So could we leverage that and design a solution which was affordable and accessible to the nonprofits? Because again, understanding the challenges and limitations in which they work in. So what we did, we brought in a set of 8 to 10 nonprofits, and we said, this is something where we can, help you with. Are you ready to, to work with us on this? You be our eyes and ears on the ground, and we will be your, tech partners in this. So that's how we started creating our first platform. So it was more listening to the nonprofits. And then when you have someone who is there partnering with you, listening to your needs, your challenges, and designing a solution, addressing them, then I think it becomes less overwhelming. So that's the approach we follow. So that is, I'll just add 1 or 2 more points here. So that is the community-centric approach. But even once you have those platforms, capacity building of the nonprofits, because we understand you are great at program implementation. And that's the kind of skill you have within the organization. So it might again be overwhelming to think, oh, I don't have tech skills. Then even if I adopt a platform, who is going to drive it, right? So we try to build that capacity within the nonprofits because we understand the skill gap that is there. So when you onboard onto our platform, we provide monthly trainings to our partners. So that happens through the webinars. We have on the digital platforms like Discord, WhatsApp, we address your queries, which is, I would say, next to like 24/7 kind of support. And we also give, on-hand engagement support through our city meetups. So that is another kind of, a capacity building support that the organization offers. And then as we design our platforms, we understand again the skills. We know that it is more of program people who would be dealing with these platforms. So we make them low code. We make them like easy to use, drag and drop. These are the ways that we design our platforms. And I would say because they're open source platforms, like what Swapnil said, there is no licensing cost, so it becomes very affordable. So yeah, I would just conclude with just saying that these are the steps that we at Project Tech for Dev take so that we make it less overwhelming for the nonprofits. And because we feel that if you see the power, the effectiveness and efficiency that tech can bring to your programs, I'm sure you will yourself become champions of using technology in your programs. So we want to bridge this gap, and we don't want you to see technology as a barrier, but as a bridge to help you reach your impact. Thanks.
Thank you, Erika. So I think being a co-designer, a co-pilot, and also provide support throughout is a good way to know so that nonprofits don't feel it less overwhelming and all of that. So I think now a question to Sapna, and I think, and both to producer also, in your journey as a donor, you have been funding nonprofits, and I'm sure some nonprofits would be very seasoned, who are very tech and data mature, and because the organization is also matured, and I'm sure you would have also fair share of nonprofits who would be not so mature, right? So, some examples, anecdotes, anything which you can say that how tech was perceived, was it always very overwhelming, or there were cases, because we have seen cases that even if there is a matured organization, their understanding of tech and data is a little less. So any experiences, any comments on this?
Sure, thank you, Swapnil. So like you rightly said, I think any portfolio has a mix of partners with, differing maturities. So we've got I would say, a good combination of mostly very, very mature partners that actually integrate technology into their programming very, very well. Maybe that's also because in our ask, I think we are very transparent in terms of, like what we need, and some of those outcomes are very technology driven. So therefore, we've been able to attract a partner base like that. And we'll speak a little bit more of that, I'm sure, through the panel.
Yeah.
I haven't necessarily, at least in my programming, Swapnil, witnessed any partner that's come or has actually expressed being overwhelmed and intimidated. That said, I think the level at which each partner perhaps integrates technology at the outset has differed. For example, we started, one of the most niche areas of work for Alstom is investments in the space of sustainable mobility. Now, you would have seen that in India, the bulk of the funding actually goes to education and healthcare. We've chosen to concentrate a large part of our funding to one of the most underrepresented sustainable goals in the areas of funding, which is SDG 13. It's just the panel that was being discussed before, which is building out sustainable cities. And within that, channeling more investments towards public transport, right? I think delivering some of the outcomes in this, for example, last mile connectivity, just being able to understand perceptions about why people don't use public transport and therefore define programs and actually narrow down the scope in terms of needs that we can actually, and social issues that we can actually solve, we need a lot of data analytics, right? So we've actually seen concepts of AI, IoT being applied and proposed to us, and then we've had the readiness, because we want to make an impact in this space, we've had the readiness to invest in those kind of technologies, right? Some have come to us, of course, it's built in very nicely into measurement and reporting, while some has been a learning curve. For example, incubation, right? We fund innovation in the space of sustainable mobility. We therefore work with incubation cells. Our first cohort, perhaps, was not so tech forward in terms of measuring impact. How are we actually, because a lot of the startups that actually came our way, because again, they were in the space of climate tech, sustainable mobility, these were tech projects. So how are we measuring impact of the program? How are we staying connected, in fact, even to these startups beyond just the funding we provided them? Those are learnings, I think, these partners, basis our feedback that we need to understand more. These are learnings our partners have taken, so they've not been intimidated. They've just not thought that we needed this so extensively in the programming. But having done the first cohort, we've identified the need, and then there's been readiness at their end to see how they can work with a broader ecosystem to then integrate technology to be able to deliver the outcomes we need.
Yeah, thank you. So I think she brought in an interesting point and I wanted to address to the audience. So see, whenever we talk about tech, largely there are two things. Tech can be a core part of your program design. So for example, you are running an education program and you want to digitize it. Then tech is your core thing. I mean, if you don't think about tech, what program do you run, right? That's one part of it. Second is you are doing some, a normal program delivery. Let's say we're working with expecting mothers or in agriculture, and you need tech for governance, monitoring, and all of that. That's a different part, how do you use tech, right? And I think with Pratyush sir, we have been discussing backstage, and because he has 20 years of experience as a donor working with all sorts of non-profits, right from community and grassroots based to a lot of matured ones. Sir, in your experience, how you have seen, and I'll ask you the second question also, which you clearly advocate with donors, that how tech should be built as a part of the cost, right? Because normally people, from a donor side, they see it as a cost center, that I'll fund you for a program delivery, right? If you need a chatbot for your EdTech product, I'm ready to fund. But why do you need an MIS system of whatever, X lakhs? Why do you need it? In business, you need tech to run operations. So much so you will need it in program delivery. And I think sir has cracked that in his donations. So I think, sir, if you can shed some light on that.
So for me, like innovation, technology are two cross-cutting themes, whatever you do in your personal life also. Forget about your CSR and all those things. If you are not, probably you will not be matured as a good human being. Same lies with whether you're on CSR and corporate. I funded over 1,000 NGOs as on today, over roughly 2,000 crores from my NGOs, corporate CSR and all those things. One thing I realized pretty clearly, NGOs, those who have more than 5 sources of funding, mostly on CSR, I have seen they're highly agile with respect to technology. This I have seen clearly. And I had, before coming here, I was working for LTI Mindtree. I had 76 NGO partners for 98 crores of CSR. And among them also, there are certain NGOs, and they have created a very good ecosystem in their own states. And some of the biggest NGO from Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai were not able to compete just because they were highly agile on technology and innovation part. Having said that, technology doesn't come so easy. It comes with some kind of GHG emission also. So you have to quickly shift towards clean technology within your technology. When you adopt technology, you have to ask yourself, am I jumping into a clean technology or it is something like obsolete kind of thing? So, and it's not only that manufacturing companies has fumes coming out of देख बोलते हैं ये polluting है. So for any IT companies, roughly 3/4 are from their scope 3 emission. Those who understood this language, scope 3. It's like, which is not in their control, but they're emitting. That includes your technology. So in technology that we are using also has an emission. So we need to be very particular on those lines, what technology I'm adopting. Technology moves faster than you realize. Faster than you realize. So always try to adopt the latest available in the market. Might cost you a bit higher on those lines. Number one. Number two, let me, before I go to that question, how to put it on CSR, I'll give you 2-3 anecdotes how it has helped me personally. During lockdown, before lockdown, I started a project on digital education. Nobody appreciated, not even my board. It was going on. We were reaching out to roughly 285,000. And all of a sudden, what was that? Janta curfew and all those started. Imagine all those 284,000 children were all in government schools. They were undergoing their school education flawlessly, sitting at their own villages. I'm talking all government-run schools in Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh, all those. And who was doing that? There are two organizations, one from Muskan from Delhi NCR, Vidyaloka from Bangalore. Mathematics teacher is sitting somewhere in Mumbai, teaching a student in Jharkhand, all this flawless. And then after that I read a UNICEF report saying only 8% of government-run school students could able to successfully complete their course because they are poorest of the poor. They should not get a poor solution. So this is how it has resulted me directly, and we have clearly measured that. Second example, there are a lot of organizations these days doing plantation activities also. I have given a solution to one of the paper industry, big paper industry, I'll not name them. They have 600 people to measure how much wood is produced. Accordingly, they can produce paper next year. 600 people to do girth measurement and the wood in itself. We provide them a solution which is on drone based, and girth measurement was automated randomly by a girth measure. They could assess how much wood is coming. Accordingly, they could give a forecast next year how much paper they can produce. Today also, they have saved their entire 600 cost, and it has reduced to roughly 12% remaining kind of things. It's almost 88% cost saving and timely. Otherwise, वो गांव जंगल जाएंगे, measure करके आएंगे, and they'll give you, which was never accurate. Third example, you export anything on, what you call that, handmade things from India to US and Europe. That traceability is a question. Human rights violations is a big question. Rang they created with a device called COSA device. I gave it to all my weavers across India. We are working with 10,000 weavers across different pockets. They put it on that loom. It has a traceability. The product got exported to the UK market. Their weekly income of 2,800 went up to 3,600 just by COSA device. Imagine direct pocket to their pocket. And this is humanly possible. It is mandatory. Adapt, progress, or else will perish in the sector itself. Coming to your question on how to put it, CSR 5% is for the corporate, not for NGO. Remember, when I'm giving funding to a NGO, it is inbuilt cost. So this COSAD, all the device I spoke to you, is inbuilt into your program. It is a program cost. And CSR heads also need to understand, as a NGO, we need to be very clear. This is purely a program cost. When you put it into program, put it as a program. Don't keep it separate. If you put it separate, it might go as a amending cost. People may think it is a 5%. So it is pretty inbuilt into the entire CSR. And the first foremost thumb rule of CSR says, interpret CSR liberally. Government has its notifications.
But everyone is scared of that, sir.
Don't get scared. It a COSA device is a program thing for me.
Yeah.
I'm increasing the weaver's livelihood directly. It has nothing to do. It is a technology, but it's a part of your program itself. Without that, I cannot crack the 2800 to 3600 and export. Nobody will buy your product unless you have traceability in Europe. So it is inbuilt into program. Post it as a program. Lot of people think a salary is always admin cost. Imagine you run a hospital. You have 5 doctors, 10 nurses. If you take their salary admin, everything is admin. You take them out, your hospital do not run. It is pure program cost. Yeah. This salary is also program cost. We have to think rationally and interpret liberally as far as CSR concerned. Sorry, back to you, sir.
No, thank you, sir. So I think for a lot of non-profits here in the room, I think you would get some benchmarks and examples that if tech is a core part of your program delivery, and even if it is not, sir gave, I think, a statement that you should challenge the norms, right? Like the example of exporting handicrafts and handlooms you said, right? A lot of people would have brushed off the program saying, what should I do now? Right? I'm spending so much, but these are not getting exported. But if there is a device, whatever it costs, and you go to your donor, ask your donors, I'm sure, you may not get people like Pratyush sir on the donor side, because everyone has a fear. I'm not saying there's someone right or wrong there, but people have their fears of, and compliance is the biggest fear.
Fears again comes from two sources. If you are not fundamentally correct, number one, if you have not borne your finger deep into.
Correct.
Fear will come to you. मैं अगर पढ़ाई ठीक से नहीं किया हूँ, एग्जाम के दिन मुझे fear रहेगा 2 दिन पहले. एकदम clear है mind में.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So one of the, the donors here, Sapna and Pratyush, are both, I think they have been saying they're advocates. And they also try and challenge the norms, and they say, why don't you use tech? Right? So I think that's important. Sapna, you wanted to add, yeah.
I think, Swapnil, I think at the outset, I think, like when you're defining your programming, you need to be clear, how important tech is in driving the outcomes of that project. Like I said, we've chosen to work in the space of sustainable mobility, where we've taken a project where we are deploying electric vehicles, to build that last mile connectivity to metro stations. We have women auto rickshaw drivers that we're integrating into the workforce. A lot of the outcomes that, have been defined as success outcomes for this project need technology for us to see whether these are actually getting
happening
done,
or not. Yeah.
to build on our learnings, to be able to scale these programs. This is a pilot project. 1/3 of my project cost is purely on just the application development, which is at the heart of this project. So it needs to be clearly defined how important it is to drive outcomes.
Seems very commonsensical. How could you miss technology, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think for a lot of donors here in the room, I think we have, again, as Dhwani, 9 years in this field of working with donors, non-profits on data and tech, we have also been trying to ask, when we are running any kind of a business, right? Even it is an FMCG business or a, whatever, from a manufacturing to a trading, without any kind of a system, you feel very handicapped. Right? What's happening? Even if you want to know metric and you have to call 5 people and say, kya chal raha hai, ye kya hua, you feel very handicapped, right? Same is with program. Right? It's a transaction. It's a series of transactions, series of workflows. So it should have some kind of an MIS, some kind of a monitoring system. I am talking about if it doesn't have a tech as a core part. So that's what I said. Initially, we spoke about tech can be 2 parts in a program. One is core tech is there, and second is I think it could be used for a program. So just as a nudge to all the donors here in the room, I think please be a little empathetic when a non-profit is trying to reach out to you that tech is required in both cases. right? I think we don't have a lot of time, and I know a lot of you would be waiting for lunch, but I think I wanted to cover two topics before I think we leave so that we do enough justice to the audience, which I think all of us feel. One is which we feel that we talk about tech and tech is required and all of that, but there's also a component that there's a lot of overload of tech, right? So for example, I'll give you an example of, I mean, I think 3 years back, 4 years back, we were somewhere in a village of Rajasthan and there was an Anganwadi Sahika. She had 4 apps for the same thing. So there were 2 CSR programs happening in that village. There was a state app of Poshan. Then there was the district magistrate there was a little enthusiastic and he or she said, hey, I don't trust all of these apps, please use my app. So what I'm trying to tell you is that for a same use case, whether it is malnutrition, whether it is expecting mother, whether it is agriculture, a lot of people do reinventing the wheel again and again of the app. I know Erica who said that they are trying to build templates, right? Common systems so that you should do that. So just, as an open question to all three of you, what as a sector, as an ecosystem, we should do that people don't reinvent the wheel, right? And how do we bridge this gap of, and I feel this is information asymmetry. I'm not blaming anyone here today. So as a donor today, if Sapna, gets a proposal from a non-profit that I need to digitize this from a chatbot point of view, you may not know what's existing in the world. And as a non-profit also, they may not know what's already existing, whom to reach out and all of that. So any cues, any recommendations, how do we solve it? As an open question, I think we have very less time. I wanted to have 5 minutes so if you all can be very brief. Thank you.
Okay, I'm happy to go first. Swapnil, I think maybe this is an ambitious ask, but perhaps what could help is some of this visibility, again, by using technology, somehow being visible more and driven at a Ministry of Corporate Affairs level, right? Now, if you go into the MCA website today, we have a lot of insights on what is happening. Right, a lot of corporates are feeding into that
largely
information.
Compliance data, financial.
Yes, a lot of compliance data, but again, the ask needs to be different, perhaps,
Correct.
if we need to drive different outcomes,
yes,
right?
yes.
So this is what I'm saying, that as an industry, like right from top-driven, yes, we've done the laws, we have the frameworks.
Correct.
If we can just define our goals, across the thematics, what needs to be driven, give a little more visibility to what's being done in that space already.
Correct.
Right? Each of us find our information
Yes.
in pockets.
Yes.
We all do our own primary, secondary researches and find information in pockets. If these are available, perhaps for us to easily look at, because anyone who is perhaps for us program driver will not look to recreate the wheel. Funds are limited.
So
everyone
it's an
drives.
ecosystem ask.
Exactly. It's an ecosystem ask, right? And who's perhaps best placed to drive that, I would think, would perhaps need to start from the Ministry of
We'll
Corporate
leave it
Affairs.
to the government. We know it will go to the 5-year plan. I think
So two things has worked me beautifully on this, very precisely. One is when we talk to our NGO partners, I proudly call that they're my partners as long as I was funding. I never allowed them to go and create a parallel new system. I said, you take out any system and 5, 10, 20% fine tuning to your need, do that. By that, at least 80 to 90% overlapping is closed. So, and you also save a lot of cost, lot of time.
Correct.
And there are a lot of people, those who already handle it. The passing on the capacity building is pretty fast on those lines.
Yes.
X NGO ने किया है, मैं Y को बोलूँगा इनसे that has worked pretty.
So cross learning, a lot of
and
collaborative
NGO
learning.
appreciate, but you have to connect those dots because they may not be knowing.
Correct.
Second, on our side also, when we fund NGOs, suppose I was talking about all this education content being created by our partners. I said that after a year of use, put them as an open source. Don't put it. The cost has gone from my side.
Correct.
No priority at your use it for 6, 8, 9 months. By next month, it should be an open source.
So everyone else can leverage it.
So that smaller NGO, even some government schools, they can easily download and use it.
Correct.
So they will not again reinvent the wheel. At our end, when I'm talking to say Dhwani, Impact Guru, Synergy, lot of people are there. I said, you all find out how we can collaborate within yourself and use some part of yours within So that each time you come out, do not invent. In the name of invention, again, there is a cost, there is a GHG emission, time, everything is being killed. So both way, we need to sit together at our end also, at NGO and also try to see what is the different application are there which you can easily use. I believe me, there are today for a NGO having 5 crores management, I bet you 90% I can connect you which is open source.
Correct, correct.
90% you need not to spend money. If you have, connect the dots. Back to you.
Yeah. Erika,
Yeah.
this is very close to your heart, I'm sure.
Yes, but totally resonating with what Sapna and Pratyush said. So we at Project Tech for Dev always educate our nonprofits that reuse and don't rebuild. We as an organization strongly believe that, let's work on partnerships. We always believe that, don't get into custom built solutions, because there are, like, you might think that, the kind of challenge or the problem that I'm going to solve
Yes.
is like unique. But what we tell them that, just believe that there are very few nonprofits who are working on unique problems. So instead of, investing time in finding a tech partner, in putting down your requirements, which is important, but just spend some time in researching on what already exists, right? And you would find that we say 90% of the problems that you are trying to solve have already been solved by someone else. So why not just leverage that
Correct.
and build on top of it, right? And what Pratyush sir said about open source solutions, I would strongly urge, the nonprofits partners in this room to, think in the way of platforms and not in custom built solutions. Because when there is a platform, especially open source platforms, it's owned by the community. The kind of savings that you do, because these are open source, there's no licensing cost. So I would just give an example. So we have a chatbot platform, which is called Glyphic. And the kind of subscription fee that is there is 1/4 of what you would find on a commercial platform. And then there is a community which is building on top of that platform. So you by default get the new features which are getting integrated into the platform. You do not have to pay extra for it. So even if the platform is meeting 70% of your needs, just start with that, because you're just getting onto your journey of technology. Don't look into custom solutions, but start small, try with what already exists, and then maybe, once you are a little mature in technology, you could think of, whether you still need to build a custom solution. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We don't want to, go over the time. I think it's almost time. But one thing I think both, Erika's organization and us, Dhwani and Project Tech for Dev, I think we are trying to create some resources there. So we have a very informal WhatsApp group. We call it CTO for nonprofits, where I think it started with this need. If someone comes to us and say, have you built a school ERP solution? And I was also, as 9 years in this sector, we were also not aware which other organization has built it. So we say, okay, put it in that group. There are some similar tech providers. There are a lot of non-profits. So one is you will get that platform as a solution, what Pratyush sir was saying. But more than that, you may have not thought the use case clearly about what do you mean by a school ERP. There would be some other non-profits who would have been there and done that. Right? So you will get that ahead of the learning curve. So I think some such initiatives like this, I think what we can try at an ecosystem level we do, but I think, right, what Sapna said, I think at an ecosystem level, someone will have to solve for it. I'm not sure if we can leave it to the government, but I think CSR Box is a great platform to leverage that.
Exactly. I think, if the need comes, and today I think the government is supporting, if you look at the work, some of the think tanks like Give Grants and Satwa are driving, a lot of that is in partnership, because I do believe, I think after 10 years of CSR, having seen all of the data, I think the government of India, the MCA is, I think, as passionate about driving this investment more strategically into the next decade.
Correct.
Right? So I think as an industry and as a collective, we can perhaps voice some of this, and I'm sure the willingness at least would be there.
We can help them with execution.
Listening to all three of you, one world that is coming to my mind.
Yes, sir.
CAF India, one stage
One
now
stage,
called.
yeah.
anyway, we are giving a lot of support to the grassroots organization.
Yes.
We can create an open source platform for all of them,
Yeah.
where let everybody comes and put there. That can go again a free offering from our side to the anybody who is not for profit.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah, so opportunity right there for all of us to collaborate. I think if anyone is willing to join this wagon, you're welcome. Okay, thank you so much. I think the speakers will be available for one-on-one offline discussions. Thank you so much, everyone.